Have you thought this through?
No way will that work.
Are you sure? Is there any money in that?
You'll never make any money doing that. How are you going to pay the mortgage? Just get a job.
You're going to try to sell that? Why can't you be normal like everybody else?
All right.
Were your parents morons too?
The savvy entrepreneur to the rescue.
Congratulations. That really turned out well.
That's a really good job.
I'm going to admit it. I'm surprised.
You know, I wish I thought of that.
I never thought anyone would. How did you do that?
I'm so glad you're pursuing your dreams.
I wish I had the courage to follow my dreams.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Savvy Entrepreneur Show. We're broadcasting here on WLCB 101.5 FM, based in the greater Chicago, Milwaukee area. If you're an entrepreneur or a small business person or thinking about becoming one, this show is for you. I'm Doris Nagel, your host for the next hour. I'm a crazy entrepreneur myself. I love helping other entrepreneurs. I've counseled lots of startups and small businesses, and I'm a serial entrepreneur too. And boy, have I seen a lot of mistakes and made a lot of mistakes. The Savvy Entrepreneur Show really has two goals: to share helpful information and resources, and two, to inspire you to make your journey maybe a little faster and maybe a little easier, and hopefully a little bit more fun. To help with that, I have guests every week on the show who are willing to share their stories and advice. And this week's guest is Stephen Clayton, who's here to share what he calls his 80-20 rule of digital marketing, focusing on the 20% of digital marketing efforts that produce 80% of the most important and impactful results. Wow, what an important topic. I can't wait to hear what Stephen has to say and his suggestions, because so many businesses, certainly small ones, it seems to me either avoid digital marketing because it is overwhelming sometimes, or they're like me, who've tried all sorts of different platforms trying to see what sticks, but only to find that you can easily spend your entire day, every day, on digital marketing without necessarily getting much of an immediate return. Now, first, just a few words about Stephen. He's the founder and CEO of a company called NetBlaze, which is a digital marketing solution for small businesses. So the perfect person to address this topic today. He's worked in the information systems field within corporate America. And Stephen, I love how you capitalize corporate America, just like I do, for 19 years. He had many roles during that time, including chief information officer for a public company. And he ended his corporate career as a vice president for a Fortune 500 company. After leaving corporate America, he became a serial entrepreneur. He started or co-founded 6 different startups, 4 of which are in business today. The oldest is more than a decade old, and they're running profitably. And his companies employ more than 60 people all around the world. He grew up in a small town in New Jersey. He currently splits his time between Chicago, yay, Chicago, and Hilton Head, South Carolina. He's married with 2 adult children, and he has lots of hobbies and interests, including golfing, boating, auto racing, and traveling. Wow, that sounds like fun. So, Stephen, thanks so much for being on the show today. Welcome to the Savvy Entrepreneur Show.
Well, thanks. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, I am absolutely, as I said, psyched to have you here because, boy, oh boy, social media, digital marketing, I think is a giant mystery or a giant black hole for a lot of small businesses. But before we get into that, I'd like you to start just talking a little bit about NetBlaze and why you started the company, when and how. I mean,
Sure.
Tell us the story behind it.
Well, NetBlaze is really designed to be, to solve that problem that you just outlined, that it's such a frustrating problem for small business owners. And so, what we envision NetBlaze to be is that one-stop solution, for local small business digital marketing needs. And the idea is for it to be easy, everything in one place, and cheap. That's another thing, because as we all know, I know most of us do all sorts of startups, we're bootstrapping them ourselves and there's not a lot of money to go around. So this is a population, again, as you said, and I would absolutely concur that these small business owners is just a frustrated population when it comes to digital marketing. They're confused. There's a lot of stress because they know, it's a strange paradox because small business owners know that digital marketing is very, very important because they know how they find companies to do business with. They go on Google,
Right.
right? Reviews, all that sort of stuff. But so they know it's important. But on the other hand, there's so much confusion about what should I be doing? How much of it should I be doing? What should I focus on? And that's, what we started to see because all of our businesses are built on digital marketing. They're all sort of virtual kind of companies that rely on only digital marketing, not foot traffic or anything like that. So we sort of grew up in that area over the last 15 years. And when we talk to small business owners and they find out what we do, they're just like, oh, geez, I have no idea what I'm doing. Can you help me? I ended up feeling like the doctor at a dinner party and everybody wants to, show me their rash. Like, is this something I should be worried about? And it's true. That's kind of how it started to feel like. So around 4 or 5 years ago, myself and some of my business partners, we got together and said, all right, what would help look like for small business owners? And, and that's when we started to brainstorm and develop our SaaS application and how NetBlaze really took shape. And then I ran with it. And a couple of years ago, we went to market with our current product.
Wow. Well, I can't wait to hear more about it, but I'm curious. As I say, this isn't your first rodeo. It's obvious from the introduction. You've had a lot of different roles in your career. What would you say that you learned from your past experiences that led you to NetBlaze and has helped you build it successfully?
I think, it really came out of, us starting and spending 15 years of learning in gory detail the ins and outs of digital marketing. And that was the biggest thing. When I left corporate, I said, okay, I want to start building online businesses. And again, this was kind of before it was even as popular, as it is now. And, because I had an IT background, it was kind of a nice mix of IT plus sales and marketing. And I actually spent my first few months before I even developed any companies or anything, writing software that, tracked online advertising, direct response. And that was a huge big thing. Yeah. So I sort of took all of that corporate IT experience, and it was a great time because it was the beginning of the internet boom and building these online businesses and e-commerce sites and all that sort of stuff. And so I put all those things together and went off and, spent the next 15 years building online companies, right? But during that time is when I started to have a lot of interaction with small local business owners just within my own network. And that's when it hit me that, geez, these guys are really struggling. They know how important it is, but they just have no idea what they should be focused on. So I started working with quite a number of them, just started out as just friendly help, and then grew into sort of a consulting business. But
yeah, as you say,
you have to figure out how to scale it and how to help more people. That's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and we'll talk about that as we get into some of these topics, because you make it sound easy to do, but I suspect it's not quite that easy. You're a proponent of the 80-20 rule. I think we both agree companies really need to invest in digital marketing. But as you say, it's really overwhelming for a lot of them. What does the 80-20 rule mean for you?
So, the obvious, the idea behind an 80-20 rule is you pick those 20% of things that give you the 80% of the return on investment, the best bang for your buck. So that's the concept. But what are those things? And it's so important with digital marketing because it's so easy to get distracted by lots and lots of different things that do not matter. Like the local guy tweeting,
Right. The bright shiny object syndrome, which a lot of us entrepreneurs are guilty of to begin with.
Yeah, exactly. So what's the 80-20 rule? It's worrying about, a set of things within digital marketing and doing them well. And those things are your website, search engine optimization, and specifically what I mean by that is the strategies and tactics that you can employ to show up when people type into Google, if you're a pizza places near me, right? We've all done that. That's how we find businesses. And, you want to show up in that map, in the 3-pack, the 6-pack, whatever people are looking at. You want to show up on their phone and all that kind of stuff. So the website, search engine optimization, showing up, reputation management, making sure that you are getting reviews across the different places that you need to. At the very least, you better be getting them in Google, in Facebook, in Yelp, maybe TripAdvisor. Kind of depends a little bit on what your business is. So getting reviews, but also making sure that you respond to reviews and being aware of like, oh, I've got a 4-star rating on Facebook. CRM, customer relationship management solution, which is a fancy way of just saying, look, you better have a way to reach out to your customers through email and text or text, just to be able to communicate with them, to be able to say, hey, I'm running a special. Hey, I've got a sale going on, or I've got a new product, or whatever it is, right?
Right. Keeping top of mind with potential customers and existing customers.
Exactly. And then finally, social media strategy for Facebook, and focusing pretty much only on Facebook. There are some exceptions to that. Sometimes Instagram is and by the way, I'm not trying to suggest that, well, Instagram is useless or YouTube is useless or Twitter is useless. It's not that they're useless, but if I'm the local pizza guy, I've got enough to do, right, to worry about my website, SEO, reputation management, a CRM system, and a social media strategy for Facebook. I'm not sure that realistically, even if I offload, outsource all of that to a company like NetBlaze, that I can really focus on anything else. And that's okay, because those things are what give us 80 or perhaps even much more than 80% of the benefit. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about the 80-20 rule for digital marketing for small business.
Well, that certainly resonates with me. As I alluded to in the introduction, I can personally attest that it is really quite easy to spend entire days doing digital marketing on different platforms and not necessarily having much to show for it, at least in the short term. I think there are some kinds of professional service businesses in particular that, I don't know if search engine optimization is as important as it is just being in front of the right kind of clients at the right time, which is a challenge. But, you may challenge me on that. So you've already addressed where a small business should start. I guess there's probably 2 kinds of businesses you deal with. One is maybe new businesses, and that's probably the most fun work because you can help them build their foundation right from the beginning. But I'm sure a lot more of them already have or have been doing something. And so how do you help a business that's already doing things? They already have a website, they already are doing maybe some tweeting or have a Facebook page or whatever. How do you help them prioritize what they need to do on a limited budget?
Yeah, in my experience, it's not dramatically different from new businesses, because in my experience, most people are not doing the 20% well. I mean, they built a website 10 years ago, and it was probably their brother-in-law in his basement who built it, which was fine 10 years ago, but now doesn't show properly on a mobile device, which is a death nail. If you don't show up on a mobile device, not only are you not going to have a pleasant experience for, a potential customer, but you're also not going to show up in the search engine results, because Google makes a point of saying, look, if your website doesn't show up, appropriately on a mobile device, I'm not even going to bother presenting you to people who are searching for pizza places near them. So to me, it's not much different. When we start talking to a new customer, regardless of whether they're new or an existing business, we just go back to this 20%. We've got to nail the website. It's got to be a good quality website with, and it has to show up effectively on mobile.
And it has to load quickly too. That's a problem I've had with my own site, and I've seen with others is that it takes too long to load. You're gone.
Yes, but not only, and again, this is another one of those examples with Google. If it takes too long to load, people are just out of there. But it also will not show up in the search engine rankings. Google's switched over the last 20 years. They've had quite an evolution. And they've moved a lot more towards understanding the quality of websites to decide how they will show them or if they will show them in the search engine rankings. And if you've got a website that takes, 2 minutes to load, you're never going to show up when people search for pizza places near you.
Right.
So those things are devastating because it's as if there's some, you start a new business and 30 years ago and you're not allowed to get in the yellow pages. Well, good luck with that.
Right.
So we work this, we beat this 80-20 rule thing to death because we find that's the thing to keep people focused and to answer any questions like, well, should I tweet? Well, is your last name Kardashian? If it's not, then no, you shouldn't tweet. Let's worry about website, SEO, reputation management, CRM, and your social media strategy for Facebook. And in my experience, it is the rare company that has nailed all of those. And until you nail all of those, I don't think you should even be thinking about anything else, which would even include paid advertising and things like that.
Interesting. Well, so I think there are still some businesses out there. I've actually talked to a couple of them who I say, can I tell listeners your website? And they say, well, I don't have one. So there are still businesses who don't really believe in digital marketing.
Yeah.
What statistics, what advice, what anecdotes can you share with them to perhaps push them off the fence?
Sure. Well, first of all, you're right. Depending on what study you look at, some 20 to 30% still in 2020 of businesses don't have websites, which just blows me away.
Well, some will say I have a Facebook page and that's good enough. I don't know if it is or it's not.
Definitely not. How many times are you searching for a plumber and you find his Facebook page when you type in plumber near me?
No, that's a good point. Never. That would be a never.
So yeah, I mean, look, this would be the equivalent question of 30 years ago saying, do I really need to be in those pesky yellow pages? I mean, really, 4 out of 5 consumers use Google to find local businesses. I don't know what the 5th person does, but 4 out of 5 do. 97% of people now find out more about a local company online than anywhere else, including talking to friends and relatives. 91% of 18 to 34-year-olds, which will become 40 to 50-year-olds, and trust online reviews as much as personal recommendations.
Wow. That's insane.
It's crazy. 75% of consumers make judgments on a company's credibility based on their website alone. It's crazy. But here's I think the most telling thing when I encounter somebody who says something like that. I just ask them, look, if you just were vacationing somewhere and you wanted to go out for Mexican food, how do you find a Mexican restaurant? I'm like, oh, that's easy. I just go into Google and I type in Mexican restaurant near me. I'm like, okay, well,
right.
Why are we having this conversation?
Right, exactly. For me personally, I think one of the problems is that as a small business person, I think a lot of people were like me. You need to invest in digital marketing.
Yeah.
And you probably need some help because as much as you can go to seminars about LinkedIn networking and, all the different platforms, for most small business people, it's not their core competency. It's really not what they should be spending most of their days doing. But one of the challenges I found is that there are so many social media consultants out there. And a lot of them, in my experience, are certainly well-intentioned. They may have a very happy and enthusiastic client base, but a lot of them, in my experience, either don't seem to have the full picture of what they need to be focusing on, or they're really good at one thing. So, I'll just give you an example. I was looking for some help, and one of them said, "Oh, your branding and your colors, you need to start with that. You have to redo that because that's just not right." And I thought, "Oh, wow, okay, I don't know, is that right?" And then, so I thought, well, I'll talk to some more. And another person was like, you got to really focus on SEO. Your website looks nice, but you got to invest in SEO. And, I kind of scratched my head and thought, well, that might be right too. I just don't know. So,
Right.
So my point, this kind of long-winded point, is that there's an awful lot of consultants out there who are well-intentioned and maybe know their lane really
Yep.
well, but don't necessarily have the whole picture. And so finding a good advisor, I think, is really a challenge.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about that?
Well, I agree. I mean, 100% with everything you said. I think what's important, in my opinion, is to find someone who understands the whole bigger picture and that all of these things work together. It's not enough to have a good website. I think it used to be that we call these folks the build it and they will come folks. I'm going to spend all of my time and energy and build the perfect website and then sit back and watch the business roll in.
Right.
So that's just one component. So I think first thing is that you've got to find people that are looking at all of these things together and have one cohesive strategy. And they may have a different, opinion of what the 20% you should focus on. But for us, again, it's all that website SEO, rep management, CRM, social media strategy. All that stuff has to work together and become your digital marketing strategy. So I think that's number one. The second thing is I think that a lot of these folks focus solely, and I think you were alluding to this, solely on tactics. I'm going to make sure that I post on Tuesdays on Facebooks because I know that gets the best engagement from soccer moms in the Midwest. So they're sort of heads down, very tactical, as you said, in their lane. But what I find is that that's not really what most small local businesses needs. Again, that's getting into this other percentage of things that don't add a lot of value. What you want are people that talk about the goals. And specifically, if somebody's not talking to you about making sure and measuring that you're getting new customers, that you're keeping existing customers, and that you're increasing your average order value, whether that's product or services, if they're not focused and helping you focus on one or all of those three things in any of their proposals and strategies, then they're not the right person.
Well, it's funny. I work with a couple of not-for-profits at this point in my career, just as a way of giving back. And I had a conversation with the public relations director of one of them just last night. And she was like, well, we need to keep posting on Facebook every Tuesday because look at how many likes we have now. And, I asked her, I said, well, so do we have any way of translating and knowing whether all those likes, are they translating into more donors, more sponsors, or more tickets being sold? She says, well, I have no idea, but this is just great that we have so many more likes now and shares. She goes, this is great. And I go, I don't know if it's great or not. I mean, to me, if it's not selling tickets or it's not increasing the amount of sponsors, I don't know if it's so great.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Measuring is another huge thing and one that I probably should add to my 80-20 rule because the place this really shows up is in paid advertising. You can go to someone and they're like, I need to do some paid advertising to get, law firms are good for this. And you ask people, okay, well, how much can you pay to get a customer? Oh, I don't know, about $50. And I say, well, okay, well, what are you basing that on? What's the lifetime value of a customer? Oh, I don't know. I'm like, okay, well,
couple $100,000, yeah. Wait.
I mean, if you don't know that, then how do you know? And lawyers are my favorite thing with that, because as you start to dive deeper, they start to realize, oh, lifetime value of a customer could be thousands and thousands of dollars.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, well, it's not $50 to get a customer. You can spend $5,000 to get a customer, and you still make 100% ROI.
Yeah.
But people don't think like that, and they have to.
Well, I hate to do this because I can't wait to hear more, and I've got a million more questions. But Stephen, we need to take a quick break right now for station identification and a word from a few of our sponsors. This is Doris Nagel, and you're listening to the Savvy Entrepreneur Show. We're here this week with Stephen Clayton, our guest, who's the founder and CEO of a company called NetBlaze, which is a digital marketing company. And Stephen is here to talk about something so important, which is the 80-20 rule of digital marketing to help make sure that businesses like yours and like mine spend their limited time and resources wisely to get the best bang for that investment. So, Stephen, before the break, we were talking about how a lot of people don't focus on the measurement or focus maybe on the wrong measurement. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think with anything that you do, I think that we sort of intuitively are looking to see, am I getting results? And a lot of the times it's very easy. You're sitting there and you're putting effort into building something, and suddenly it takes shape in front of you. And so you can sort of see a cause and effect. And it's kind of one of these dirty little secrets of digital marketing that a lot of these things are harder to see. Let me give you a specific example. A customer calls in to a company and becomes a prospect of some kind. Well, how did that customer find the business? How do we know which marketing effort, if any, prompted that person to call? It could be that they, again, years and years ago, it could be that they just found you in the Yellow Pages. Could be that they found you on Facebook. Could be they found you in Yelp, search engine optimization. They found you in Google. And people tend to just go, oh, it's too hard to figure out how to track that. But first of all, it's not. It isn't easy, I'll give you that. But it is something that you really do need to track as best you can. One small example is you can have different phone numbers actually for different sources, right? That all actually just forward to your main number. But you can get statistics. So we do this quite a bit with paid advertising. You can get statistics that show what number people are calling. And you'll actually see this on TV commercials. Like infomercials are famous for this, where they'll say, and go to /TV45 or something. You'll sometimes still see that kind of stuff. And it's because they're tracking which commercials are sending people to a website or something. So anyway, long-winded answer there, but it's really, really important to try really hard to both measure the improvement over time. So we measure things like how many people are finding us in searches online, how many people are finding your local business, how many people are pushing the call button. How many people are looking and reading the reviews, that sort of thing. And so it's really, really important to track those over time to see that they're improving based on your efforts. But then it's also really important to track those different channels of where people find you. For example, if most of your people are finding you on Yelp, well, then you probably, within your reputation management, you want to focus a lot on making sure that you're getting a lot of Yelp reviews. Doesn't mean you completely ignore Facebook, Google, TripAdvisor, but you prioritize Yelp over, these other places.
So I'm curious though, what do you do? So this was one of my businesses, which was professional services, and looking at where the leads were coming from, it seemed like even though we were doing lots of different kinds of outreach in social media, we were doing networking, speaking, webinars, blogging, tweeting, trying to find referral partners. again, doing exactly what you were suggesting we not do, which is kind of like throwing a whole bunch of stuff out there and seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
But the disappointing part and the puzzling part was that leads were coming from all of those places and by about equal amounts, few from each one. So
Right.
what do you do with a situation like that? What does that mean, and what should you do differently?
Well, I mean, you could look at there's a whole bunch of things that could be at work there. It could also be the law of small numbers there, so you really don't have enough data, enough of a population sample to see which thing is really your best avenue. You could flip a coin 3 times and it could be heads every time. That doesn't mean it's not going to end up being tails.
Right, exactly. But you're probably not going to win the lottery with that strategy.
Yeah. So that's one thing. The other thing is then also looking at further downstream in the sales cycle, if you can. So what are the quality of those leads? You may be getting the same number of leads, but do they actually turn into paying customers? And so that's another thing that I would be looking at if you have a situation like that to try and prioritize. Other than that, it's not a bad thing. If you're getting all these leads from different places, then all of a sudden you've got an opportunity for scale. Then you can outsource and apply more resources on every single one of those areas then, if they're all really good. But it's all about the data.
And the other thing I've heard people say is that your effective digital marketing strategy might really depend on the kind of business or the industry or the size of your business or maybe your budget or the delivery model. Do you think that's right? I mean, for example, law firms, like you mentioned, I don't know if having a Facebook page, maybe it is a good idea. I don't know. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I think it's the rare business that doesn't benefit from this 80-20 rule of, focus. It's very, very rare. In fact, to be honest, I can't think of any that it wouldn't apply to all of them. There are some specialty kinds of things. Now, well, certainly size. Size really has no impact on this 80-20 rule, except for, if all of a sudden you're big enough where you can have your own marketing department and your own chief marketing officer. And then instead of the 20%, you're going to be focused on the 100%, which is a whole other conversation.
Yeah, that's a great problem to have.
Yeah, sure, exactly. But other than that, size doesn't matter, in this scenario as to what to focus on. And most of the time, the type of business doesn't really matter that much when you're talking about, look, everybody needs a website. Everybody needs to show up when people search for your type of business. Everybody needs a way to communicate with their customers. Everybody needs to manage their reputation. And, Facebook, I'll give you that. There might be 1 or 2 areas that it's not as important and there aren't as many things as you can share, but I think it's still a no-brainer. I think where you get to certain tactics I'll give you my favorite example is a real estate agent. So real estate agents are different in a bunch of different ways. First thing is that they usually have a website that is part of a bigger corporate, they're Remax or called a banker, right? So they're kind of covered under that. So there's that. And then the other is that they have some specialty areas that they really need to advertise in, like Zillow and Realtor.com, that kind of, which is very unique to their business model. And I would argue that's more important often than SEO. If I was a real estate agent or if I was counseling a real estate agent, and for that reason, by the way, we think real estate agents are not a very good candidate for NetBlaze.
Interesting.
Because they just are this outlier. And if I was consulting for a real estate agent, I would say, you know what, SEO is probably one of these rare times when it's really not as important for you, because most people don't find a real estate agent by Googling. They're on Zillow nowadays, they're on Realtor, and they find them right there on the sidebar. That's where they find them.
I'm curious too about how you as a business keep up with all of the changes that are occurring. I mean, you alluded to Google's algorithms for coming up with those top hits for searches. Every day it seems like I'm exaggerating, but A couple of years ago, I don't think anybody ever heard of TikTok, and before that, Pinterest. They're cropping up every day. How do you keep up with all of those changes for you and your business, and how do you help your clients do that?
Well, for us, it's our portfolio of other companies really, because one example, we have a international e-commerce company where we manufacture products internationally and we import them to the United States, and we sell in Europe as well, and Australia, and we sell in brick and mortar stores and things like that. And so digital marketing on a national scale is way more difficult and complex than it is to help the local pizza guy. So if we sort of are worried about doing it on a national scale for several of our companies, we learn a ton and become pretty much stone cold experts, And then it's kind of like a major leaguer batting in the minor leagues when we, go down and start to work on local small business owners. It's much easier for us. And so we have a level of expertise that really allows us to be, really hard to beat us, in that kind of an environment. So I think it's that one big part of it. There's a synergy there, which we've tried to build into all of our different companies. The other thing is when you start to work with tons of different small businesses around the country, you really understand what works and what the concerns are, what their problems are, how to help them best, So I think it's really those two things that help us do that.
Is there a role still for non-digital marketing, do you think? And if so, what is that role?
Yeah. So clearly the answer is yes, but the question is for who or whom? I always get that. So
there's no grammar police on this show, just so you know.
I never quite got that one. So that's the big question. For who? So there are places for billboards on the side of buses. There are places for Super Bowl commercials to use.
I still get mail from some businesses.
Sure.
So
actually, direct mail is making a big comeback. But for most of those things, and you alluded to this a little bit when you talked about your website and colors and stuff. There's a difference between brand building and marketing. And
that's interesting.
So marketing is much more, well, when I think of marketing, and believe me, everybody has their own definitions for this. So I'm not pulling out the college textbook here and giving any reasonable definition. But for me, when I think about marketing, it's tactical and it's direct response marketing to get me a result. And that result is a new customer, keeping an existing customer, or increasing my average order value. That's marketing. And that's what local businesses are concerned about. Brand Geico is the best example of brand building. Okay, they have great commercials, billboards everywhere. Do you think there's anybody sitting there going, all right, we spent $70,000 on this billboard. How many customers do we get from that billboard?
Right. I'm gonna dial right now and change my insurance company based on that billboard. No, probably not, right?
No. So they don't care because that money is going towards brand building. How many customers did the Super Bowl commercial get us? Who the heck knows? Now, of course, there are ways that they can try to measure that, before and after. They can look at the slope of curves of, new customers and so on and so on. But in general, they don't do it for a direct result. They do it for brand building. And so for brand building, these kinds of non-digital marketing avenues, whatever they are still clearly viable. They have been forever. They will be forever. They may look a little different, but not for this. But most of the time, not for the small local business owner.
That's an interesting. I love the distinction you've made there, and I guess I'm curious for businesses, how should they invest in brand building versus marketing? And I guess some of that's kind of self-evident, because if you don't have customers over the long haul, you can have the best brand, but if people don't actually see a need for the product or service, you're going to eventually go out of business. But how do you strike a balance between those? What's your advice on that?
I don't think that small business owners have to strike a balance because They don't really have to do brand building. It's a rare small business that comes into play that is providing a product or service that hasn't existed before. So now I have to build a brand and make people understand that there's a need for it. I have this conversation with authors. A lot of time an author will come to us and say, hey, can we use NetBlaze to promote my book? And we have to tell them, look, authors are also not a good NetBlaze customer, because as an author with a new book, you're trying to sell something that people aren't currently looking for. So you have to build a brand around yourself as an author and this book in particular. And we don't do that. That's not what we do.
Interesting.
And you don't have to do that. You don't have to build a great brand as a pizza guy, as a plumber, do you have to, do you need to have a decent, logo on your website? And does it help to have a good name and, maybe a nice colorful truck? Sure. And those are all branding things, but it's not, some Harvard Business School case study of building a brand. It's you and your wife getting together and saying, yeah, that looks nice. It's really about it's as stressful as that.
Right. Well, it's interesting because some new businesses are really selling into what I call a nascent need. What they hope is a nascent need. So that is a challenge when you're either trying to convince people that there's a need for it, or you're trying to make some kind of analogy, or you're trying to appeal to emotion. I think that's a different scenario than everybody knows when they want a piece of pizza, and it's just who are they going to call to get their pizza from, or they need a plumber. Would you agree that's kind of an important distinction?
Oh, yeah. No, it's totally important. I would just also add, though, that most small local businesses are of the pizza category rather than this, emerging new service or technology or product.
Yeah.
As far as volume goes.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, my question is for you is where would you like to see NetBlaze in 5 years? And how do you envision it growing? And I guess part of that question, as you alluded to, is scaling. What's your vision for scaling the business?
Well, scaling is really, just a matter of working the different channels of getting leads, and just like any small business would do, and, making them as efficient as possible, and then doubling down on those that work. And, we're always running all sorts of different, we call them funnels, and whether those are in-person sales reps or obviously digital marketing efforts or paid advertising efforts. We have other kinds of, networking events at trade shows and all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of just block and tackle stuff. I think what's more interesting is my vision for what NetBlaze could do as a platform in the future. And for me, I want it to be more of almost like, if you think about it, years ago, the code name for this was Madison when we were developing the software. And what I wanted was almost a marketing Siri for a small business owner. And so if you sort of envision, let's say that 5 years from now, the NetBlaze platform has, pick a number, 3,000 restaurants all across the country as part of its portfolio of customers. And then further imagine that NetBlaze knows pretty easily where in the country it's raining tonight, and it knows it's Friday, and it knows that it's a restaurant that serves dinner. So it then goes out and emails all the restaurant owners on Friday afternoon that fit that category.
Oh, wow. This is like marrying Spot Hero with
yeah, exactly. So
Google Maps with social media, right?
Right. And it can say something like, hey, look, it's going to rain tonight. And I know that 20% reduction in covers happens when it rains. So would you like me to send out an email and a text to all of your customers saying the following: rainy day special, come in by 6 p.m. and get a free dessert or whatever. And all the business owner would have to do is just say yes, click yes, and NetBlaze does it. So
wow,
that's my vision for where we can get to, which is being much more proactive.
Yeah.
Once we've got the 20% nailed, then we've got this opportunity to apply some artificial intelligence, and some best practices across all of these different companies, all around the country. And
Very
combine that with real world data and have an effective proactive strategy.
The possibilities are kind of staggering, and I suppose at some level it's starting to happen on the internet, but it hasn't really gone out beyond the internet. So I was looking at shoes the other day, and then I went to another website, and somehow Mr. Internet or Mrs. Internet knew that I had been looking at shoes, and so I got some pop-ups about shoes, even as I was searching other websites. But I think you're talking about taking that general concept almost and taking it off the internet into the real world.
Yes. Yep.
Very cool. Well, any parting words of advice for small businesses in terms of rethinking, maybe recalibrating their digital marketing? Because I'm pretty sure that a lot of them are not spending their money today as efficiently as they could.
I think everybody needs to sort of take a step back and understand that hope is not a marketing strategy, and you alluded to that before with throwing things against the wall and seeing what sticks. It doesn't have to be this mysterious thing that you're worried about. If you just focus on those core things that I was talking about, you can give yourself a break and not have to worry about tweeting or TikTok or any of that stuff.
Right, and trying to learn Instagram, and then making sure you remember, oh my God, it's Tuesday, I've got to do my Facebook post, and
right, exactly.
It's Wednesday and I haven't done my LinkedIn blog.
Yep.
Before you know it, your head is exploding.
Yeah, exactly. And think to yourself, like, always put yourself in your customer's shoes. I mean, honestly, how many blogs are most people reading when they're looking for a plumber or a pizza place? I'm going to say the answer is pretty low. I mean, really, just think about your own experiences when you're looking for a company that's perhaps similar to the one that you're starting. What do you do?
Right. And even professional services, I'd say that's the case. I mean, they say to people who are blogging experts or write, ghost blog posts, say, well, you've got to stay top of mind. But the fact of the matter is that if I need a tax lawyer to help me, I'm not going to go to LinkedIn and go see who wrote some great tax blogs. I'm going to call my accountant, or I'm going to call some friends or whatever,
Or you're going to read some incredible reviews that have been left.
Right.
And so that's the big thing that professional services people can invest in. It's much more valuable to have that, than it is a blog that you're writing.
Yeah. Well, not to mention it's a lot less time consuming. I can tell you from personal experience.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time to write a thoughtful blog. It really does take a lot of time. So if you're going to do it, either do it because you love it and you just can't help yourself, or stop yourself and think about the question and answer the questions that you've just asked before you do it. Phenomenal advice. Stephen, we're almost out of time, but I have to ask you one last question, which is an important one, which is that how should people reach you if they're interested in learning more about what NetBlaze has to offer, or just chatting with you about digital marketing or some of the things we've talked about today? How would you recommend they reach you?
Best place is our website, not ironically. NetBlaze.com. There you go. BLAZE.com.
All right. Terrific. Well, I want to say thank you so much for being with us today. Such an important topic. I learned a lot, and I'm sure some of our listeners did too. And I think in some cases, it probably is helpful to go back and re-listen to some things, because there's a lot of nuggets in there that I myself might need to listen to and kind of play out the logical conclusions of some of the many nuggets that you shared with us today. So, Stephen, thanks so much for being with us today. It was a delight having you.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
That's our show for this week. Thanks so much for listening, folks, and thanks especially to our guest this week, Stephen Clayton, the founder and CEO of NetBlaze, a digital marketing company. And we've been talking with him this week about the 80-20 rule of digital marketing to help businesses, small businesses in particular, make sure that they're investing their limited time and resources to get the best bang for that investment. So you can find more helpful information and resources on my website, globalocityservices.com. There's a library there of free blogs, tools, podcasts, and other resources. And because this show is for you, my listeners, the door is always open for comments, questions, suggestions, or just to shoot the breeze. You can always email me at dnagel, N-A-G-E-L, at lakes, plural, lakesradio.org. And I promise I'll respond. I'd love to hear from you. Now, be sure to join me next Saturday again at 11 Central Time, noon Eastern. We'll have another great guest and topic. But until then, I'm Doris Nagel, wishing you happy entrepreneuring.